My name is Joe Ward and I'm running for mayor of the CBRM. And I want to talk to you today about safety in our downtowns, particularly in Sydney, but in all of our downtown cores. So if you stay with me, we're going to talk about needle collection responsibility, surveillance cameras, security and policing, and a recommendation for a new integrated services facility to be provided by the Nova Scotia Health Authority. But while talking about these topics and solutions, what we're not going to do is we're not going to forget about human dignity. My position is that it's obviously difficult to find a perfect solution, but it's also not an either-or situation. First of all, you should know that I'm not just another wannabe mayor thinking I can improve everything without any firsthand experience whatsoever on any topic. But like many of you, to varying degrees, several members of my own extended family have suffered the tragic consequences of addiction, including homelessness, but also the most tragic and irreversible outcomes of all. So I carry some of that trauma from those outcomes with me, and not in the BS victim sense, but still very deeply ingrained. And while some mayoral candidates suddenly are collecting selfies at every local event or pancake breakfast that might create a photo-taking opportunity for them, at some point each day, I interact daily with the most innocent victim of life's social ills, and that's specifically my foster brothers and sisters. And a great majority of them are separated from their parents due to addictions, mental illness, poverty, and generational trauma. I have a much better understanding than many of you have realized until now. And this is a tough issue. It's polarizing and it can quickly spiral out of control on social media with people either pledging full support of vulnerable people at all costs and all consequences or fully opposing those who need help. And I ask you not to act in a polarized way, but to listen to my ideas first. Please resist the urge some of you are feeling right now to react exactly as I've just described. We're not ranting today. We're talking about what we can do to improve the CBRM. And I believe we can achieve both public safety and human dignity for those in desperate circumstances. Now, my focus as mayor will be on actionable strategies, not just philosophical debates. While this conversation often centers around downtown Sydney and is linked to homelessness and addictions, it's important to recognize that these issues exist in other areas of our municipality, and not all incidents downtown are caused by people facing homelessness or addiction. Yes, the news of violent crime is concerning, but we have to avoid painting everyone in need with the same brush. I think it's reasonable to say that most of the people who make up the vulnerable population dislike the inappropriate behavior just as much as you and I do. It puts their safety at risk too. But do the youth in the cheerleading club across the street from one of our support facilities in Sydney have to be exposed to problematic behavior, with their parents and their coaches concerned about what they might see or wonder if any violent activity could occur on any given evening? I'm not dog whistling. I'm telling you that there are people downtown that are not uncaring, not one bit, but they're still concerned for their safety. We have to help people, but we have to do so in a way that works for everyone in the community as much as humanly possible. Our strategy has to address both the actual and the perceived risks. Even if the real risk is low, people will not feel safe if they believe it's high and they're anxious about spending time downtown. Did you ever buy a lottery ticket? Did you do so because you thought that the very rare occurrence of winning wasn't a possibility for you? A strategy should address perceptions too. We know that with careful handling of discarded needles, the chances of being infected by a bloodborne disease are very, very small. But perceptively, how many of you want to touch or dispose of a needle used for injecting drugs? It's okay not to be okay with that. A problem will always be the difference between what is desired and what is perceived, and we can't make that gap disappear by force of will. Now, when we watch the news, we hear about celebrities with addictions who end up in a perfect rehab facility sometimes. And in real life, for real people, our health authority isn't doing enough. There's no rehab by the ocean for one-on-one counseling while watching the waves roll in, even though we have a surplus of ocean shoreline. And as long as there isn't, we can't just shuttle folks away somewhere else to get better. The intention of healthcare is correct. The destination doesn't exist yet. In terms of human dignity and well-being, while we plan integration carefully, we have to avoid segregation or isolation. It's not supposed to be an out-of-sight, out-of-mind strategy, but it's also not one in which we overlook the effects on the community, whether it's commercial or a tourism area or a residential neighborhood. The safety and well-being of everyone is important. For those of us who are broken and looking to be healed, for those of us who are just hanging in there, And for those of us who are fortunate enough to be doing well. But now let's get to some ideas and solutions. So firstly, as mayor, I have no expectation of regular citizens or tourists handling sharps. I am never going to suggest that, not ever. A call to 311 or to the police, non-emergency line, should be met with staff who are fully aware of how collection is handled and with urgency. They should be patient, they should be helpful, and they should be empathetic to your concerns. That means there needs to be a process, and there needs to be someone responsible, and that the ones responsible will be expected to follow that process. Now, a friend of mine gave me a reality check the other day. It's not the job of police to pick up needles. Can you imagine being out investigating one of our missing people and then getting a call from dispatch to pick up another needle in one of our downtowns? In my view, in the direct vicinity of any of our support services for vulnerable population, it's the responsibility of that organization to scan the area daily. Although their primary mission is far more important, this is not entirely different than any local business that must clean and maintain their lot and be accountable to the public for safety. And I'm not saying a support organization is a business or equivalent to one. I'm saying that they share a similar responsibility. Now, for the rest of the areas, we're going to need personnel that are assigned to do it. This is probably best managed by the CBRM. However, there needs to be funding from the health authority for that kind of role. Discarded needles are directly related to healthcare or support services. That's a part of healthcare. Of course, I'm an analytical mayoral candidate. Relying on occasional reports on social media is not what we call a valid sample space of data. And I won't know until I'm inside the CBRM with full access to our personnel to find out how frequently such discoveries are found and how they're dealt with. But let's be realistic. Expecting a person in the throes of addiction to always manage their sharp successfully is like asking a person who just got into a car accident to sweep up the broken glass before leaving in the ambulance. We have to have a process to handle it when they can't or they won't. Next, I want to discuss the idea of video cameras in the downtown with wide coverage and covering areas where there are frequent reports. The idea is not to place people in a surveillance fishbowl. But if we're not going to tolerate any occasional violent or uncivil behavior, the faster our police service can be alerted and respond, the better. Just as community policing is important to build relationships and to build trust, there is nothing wrong with being vigilant. But these cameras can help improve the safety of the vulnerable people too. More so than the general public. More often than not, it is the vulnerable people themselves who are the victims of violence, assault, or mistreatment by their peers. If a person goes missing, we should embrace the opportunity to find out who they left with and do that as fast as possible. A rapid response might save their lives. A person who needs naloxone when experiencing overdose might only be saved if we discover them fast. Call it Big Brother if you want to be exaggerative, but if a few poison dealers are caught distributing it in the downtown, do we as a society really feel bad for them? Because I don't. One of my fellow mayoral candidates recently recommended that private security be hired. And I can tell you that the only value of private security would be the perception of safety or having someone present to call the police. Security simply don't have enough authority to take any real action. If you need any confirmation of that, just visit the smoke shop at the front entrance of the Cape Breton Regional Hospital. It's not like the United States with Dog the Bounty Hunter folks running around and tasing people. Our private security professionals do not have the legal ability to do much beyond calling it in. For this limited scope of responsibility, ideally we want to find a way for this to be funded through the organizations themselves, through provincial investment. However, particularly when cruise visitors are in the downtown, an investment in security might help some of our visitors feel as though they're in a municipality that makes their safety a priority. Now, the cheerleading club might also feel a little safer getting to their cars. There's always a component of managing perspective in anything we do. With that said, although police resources are strained, we need an officer within a kilometer of the downtown or closer at all times, with regular patrols and rapid response to calls. And I don't mean in a community office, either on foot, on an electrified scooter, a motorcycle when weather permits, or however they can get there. I do not want folks sitting inside an office on Charlotte Street, greeting tourists or letting them use the loo. Now, with my last recommendation, I want to clarify something. The CBRM is not responsible for healthcare or healthcare facilities. We're not building them, we're not paying for them, and we're not managing them. But we are going to advocate for them. The concept I have is for a new healthcare building similar in architectural size and structure to the Medical Arts Building on Kings Road in Sydney. Such a building would not be located in the downtown, but it would be located in a nearby location with full access to public transit and within a reasonable walking distance. Now, the new building would include many of the support services that are already concentrated in the downtown, and we're referring specifically to Sydney right now. It would provide a new harm reduction office space for the Ally Center to transition to. It would provide several large dormitory-style accommodation rooms for folks experiencing homelessness, and it would have a collaborative healthcare clinic and a pharmaceutical dispensary. It would have a commercial kitchen to serve 3 square meals a day. It could integrate a food bank and provide basic sundries or personal hygiene supplies. It would have private security and a 24-hour staffing. And there would be a patio and a garden, both for privacy and a place of solace. Now, if we're successful in convincing the provincial government to invest in such a facility, we could work on restricting our zoning in areas that are vital to tourism, in particular, to deter future conflicts of objectives for our downtown cores, whether that's Sydney or any of our other downtowns, to allow people to seek help with human dignity rather than to become a target only for scorn. Does anyone really want to sit around all day on the street in a desperate state with everyone going by and resenting them? Is that the definition of healthcare? Because I don't think it is. This is not about segregation or out of sight, out of mind. We're not going to push people out of the city or put them in a lodge 5 miles back in the woods or forget that they're human. But as a municipality that has to manage all of our concerns, public safety for all matters, and there's no escaping the obligation of choosing our locations wisely. We can address these topics with reason, not black or white thinking, not volatility and not anger, but we have to address them. With that said, I'm asking for and I'm welcoming your feedback. Do you believe that any of the ideas that I presented are reasonable for the CBRM if I'm elected as your next mayor?